as for rules, we didn't carry military manuals around with us. We were out on the veldt, fighting the Boer, the way he fought us. I'll tell you what rule we applied, sir. We applied Rule 303. We caught them, and we shot them under Rule 303.
Letters from the front. The Mount Alexander Mail of the 12th of September 1900. Mr. Jas Newman has received a letter from his son Dr. Newman, which has been kindly handed to us. It was written at Caledon River near Fortisburg in the Orange River colony on the 29th of July last. He says, quote, 2 days after writing you from Bethlehem, we were shifted west about 16 miles towards Senecal with the intention of attacking the Boers at a place called Slobbert's Neck. The day after we started, Broadwood's brigade joined ours and about noon came in touch with the Boers and shelled them for the rest of the day with very few casualties on either side. Our brigade was sent out with the idea of occupying the above neck, while General Hunter attacked them at Retief's Neck. These are the only 2 necks of entrance to the mountains of the Basotho border from Bethlehem, and there are, as far as we know, only 2 exits on the south, viz. Navapoort Neck and Golden Gate, both of which we hold, and it was thought if we attacked at Retief's and Slobbert's Neck, the enemy would be driven back and gradually enclosed in a network of troops. Unfortunately, the Boers under De Wet were off soon, and herewith we heard about 2,000 got out of Slobbert's Neck the night before we arrived and trekked north. It was this lot we got in touch with the day after leaving Bethlehem at a place called Bultfontein. The result was that they evacuated the copies they held and went north toward Lindley. Broadford, with his brigade and some of our mounted infantry, including the Imperial Bushmen, went after them with the usual results that the Boers got away, and we have since heard they are interfering with the lines of communication about Kroonstad. They are miles too smart for our men and can get away from them easily. They are much better mounted than we are, and each man has a spare horse, and this, with small transport, makes them very mobile. They were exceedingly daring and must have passed within about 6 miles of our camp the night they got out of Slobbert's Neck, while we were all snoring peacefully. This escapade upset arrangements, apparently, with the result that we had to camp at Bultfontein for a week watching Slobbert's Neck and await the arrival of Clement's column from Senecal. On last Wednesday, the 23rd, we left Bultfontein early in the morning and went with Clement's column advanced towards Slobbert's Neck, a distance of about 9 miles. He attacked the right flank. It was not long before the fighting began by our 5-inch guns throwing 50-pound shells amongst their trenches at a distance of 4,500 yards. I got a grand view of the shelling up near the guns. They were enormous things, 15 feet to 20 feet long, and have to be drawn by 20 oxen, and make a tremendous noise when let off. On going over the Boer trenches next day, I came across part of a Boer who had been blown to pieces by a shell bursting near the trench. Under the shell fire, the Royal Irish Regiment attacked the koppies on the left and were hard at it until dusk, and got to within 20 yards of their trenches and stayed there all night. Next day it was found the enemy had gone. Our casualties were 5 killed and 38 wounded. We never know the Boer casualties as they either cart away or bury their dead. It was an easy day with us, and I had a good view of the fight. The koppies here are very steep. If you can imagine the hanging rock near Kyneton, stripped of all its trees, you have an idea of what they are like. The Boers entrench themselves in positions like this, and our men have the dangerous and hard task of driving them out. Next morning, the 24th, shelling began early. The Royal Irish, having gained the koppie on the Boer left, enabled our guns to advance on to another ridge about a mile on, and there they shelled the enemy till about noon, and we caught sight of the Boers skipping away in great haste. During the afternoon we advanced 2 or 3 miles past their position and about 5 miles from the entrance to the neck, and here we camped for the night. While we were getting into Slobbert's Neck, General Hunter succeeded in forcing his way into Retief's Neck, and his lot camped within 5 miles of us, Forrisburg, to which place the Boers were trekking. Hunter had about 60 casualties. On Friday we reached Forrisburg, and there were joined by Rundle's brigade. The Boers left about 35 sick and wounded here, also about 200 British prisoners they could not take on with them. Mrs. Stain and her children were also left behind. I did not see her as there were a sentry on guard over her house, but she said the Boers were going to fight to the bitter end. Next Saturday we left early in the morning and trekked east towards the Basotho border, but after going about 4 miles our transport was blocked by a very difficult drift, the banks being so steep that double spans of oxen and mules had to be put on to get the few wagons that went on over. To give you an idea of the difficulties, it took 40 oxen to draw the big 5-inch guns over, and as we have such a large transport, most of us had to camp for the day and night before crossing. Meanwhile, the advance guard consisting of Clements and Rundle's divisions advanced and met the Boers about 4 miles further on and had a fight. The result was 60 wounded and 2 killed, and 1 Boer gun was put out of action. On Sunday we crossed the drift and advanced about 5 miles, and I went over the position of the Boers yesterday. It is indeed a marvel how they got their guns into such a position as they do. The country is very mountainous, and they actually have one of their guns in a position one would deem impossible to get a cart, let alone a heavy gun. Yet, notwithstanding the fact that the gun was put out of action, they managed to get it away. Their celerity of movement completely nonpluses our troops. Today does not seem like a Sunday at all. We outspanned about 11:30 a.m. and then the Boers sent in for 4 days armistice, which of course was not granted. Later on in the day they surrendered, and on the strength of this we had a tot of rum, and there was general jollification and great cheering among the troops, the demeanour of whom had been completely changed. Tonight the order came that the ceremony of surrendering was to take place at 8:30 next morning, and we were all to be present. Well, we went to bed much happier than we had been for the last month. We breakfasted at 7 a.m. on Monday and started about 8 o'clock for the scene of the surrender, which was about 4 miles from camp. It was a lovely day, just in keeping with the high spirits of the troops. Reveille was sounded early, and the bands of the various regiments were treating us to some music. Everybody wore a pleased look, quite different from the grim and careworn faces under one was wont to give us lately, when nearly every day dawned with the sound of guns. After a ride of about 4 miles over very hilly and romantic country, we came to the chosen spot, which was on top of one of the highest koppies. I call them koppies, but really they are mountains. Here and there was a large, sometimes flat piece of ground. Drawn up on each side of the road was a large number of our troops, the infantry on the left and mounted infantry on the right, whilst a little further on were the big guns amongst them, being the 5-inch guns before mentioned, with their mouths pointed towards the Boer laager about 4 miles to the northeast, ready to plant a few shells there if they did not consider discretion the better part of valour. By the way, those 5-inch guns throw shells weighing 50 pounds, either shrapnel or lyddite, and the propelling force is generated from 4.5 pounds of cordite. About 9 a.m. the Boer generals, Prinsloo and de Villiers, came with the white flag accompanied by their attendants, and it was quite an imposing spectacle seeing them ride down between 2 rows of our troops to give their arms to our general. Their somewhat slovenly appearance contrasted strongly with the smart appearance of our trained men, although of course our men's clothing was very dirty. The Boer generals were accompanied by a lady, I don't know who she was. After our general had received them, the Union Jack was unfurled and floated gaily in the breeze. After 10 a.m, the Boer commandos were seen wending its way amongst the hills in the distance, and as they approached the line of soldiers, each man's rifle and ammunition were taken from him and thrown on the ground, and then they passed on in single file. Before long there was quite a pile of rifles on the ground, amongst them being many of which had been taken from our troops who had been taken prisoners. About 500 Boers came in this morning. They were a slovenly looking lot of all ages, from mere youngsters of 10 to 12 to grey-haired old men of 60. Each had one remount, and in some cases two, and this no doubt accounts for their great mobility, as they ride one horse and use the other as a pack horse. After they had come in and all arms delivered, each officer was allowed to get a rifle. I got two, one a Mauser and the other a Lee Metford, taken from a Royal Irishman who fell into Boer hands. I hope to bring them home and show them to you soon. One of their cannons also came in. I also got a lot of their ammunition, found a lot of soft-nosed explosive bullets amongst it, and also some which were reported as being poisonous, but of course they are not, but are merely dipped in a little fat to lubricate the barrel. Their transport was coming in all afternoon. Every kind of vehicle was represented, from bullock wagons to Cape carts, and I saw one carriage. Amongst their weapons were a lot of antiquated Martini Henrys, Snyders, etc., which were all destroyed. There are more Boers out there yet, and their total is reported to be 5,000, but I say 2,000 would be nearer the mark. They were evidently in a tight corner, as the only place where they could get out, viz. Navaport Neck, is held by our troops, and we are in heliographic communications with them today, and they are about 8 miles off. There seems to be a difference among the Boers at present, and it is not certain whether they will all surrender. Only the Feelersburg Commando came in today. Some others are still desirous of keeping on, but I hope they won't, as it will only mean them losing a lot of lives by our shelling their lager. There has been enough bloodshed already, and so far, since leaving Lindley early in the month, our casualties have been 250 killed and wounded. The Boers we don't know, and probably never will. So I'm in my final stop for the day, which is a little town called Learmonth. It seems to be on the edge of a big lake. I don't know if I've ever been here before. It certainly looks old. We're talking 1860s anyway. For Australia, that's old. Once again, you know, gold. It's a gold region. I think there were Chinese here, because I saw like a Chinese temple on the outskirts of town. And look at this old place. I can smell charcoal in the air. It's a Sunday, charcoal in the air, something to do with a monkey song. The Masonic Lodge, they're always good value. Hubba Dubba, 1915. Secret handshakes and all that. Anyway, I'm going to cross the main road out of Learmonth, because I think I can see the Boer War monument. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. It's probably the town hall over there. Community hall or something. Well, this is a main road in and out of Learmonth. You can see, pretty small place. Here we go. I'm not disappointed, and neither are you. Erected by the residents of the district in memory of Charles Vaughan, Sergeant, Australian Imperial Regiment, killed in action at Hartbeesfontein, South Africa, February the 18th, 1901, till the master of all good workmen shall put him to work anew. Hartbeesfontein. I think a hartebeest is a one of those deer things with horns. On the side of its head. See if there's any. Nothing else.
So he's in, as they all are, in a prime spot. Well, that's a good one, isn't it? Impressed with that. Learmonth and the Heritage Walk. Right. There it is in the day. Right, stop recording. Stop recording.